beyond software and into the physical world. We're entering a new phase, often referred to as physical AI. These technologies are beginning to reshape everyday life, industry, and increasingly areas such as public safety and security. Josh, welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Susan.
Can you briefly explain what Laki Robotics does today?
Yes. Laki Robotics, essentially, we're building the AI brain that powers autonomous robotics. We turn everyday real-world security challenges into physical AI products to solve, to protect people, places, and infrastructures.
When you think about physical AI, how do you define it in practical terms?
Well, in short, physical AI is the ability of the robotics to be able to think, sense, and interact with the real world. And what that means is the robotics system has to constantly be able to adjust and navigate in the real world environment, whether it's the weather or different service, road service types, to be able to collect that information in real time, process it, and make new decision based on the information given.
So it's autonomous. It's different than just analyzing. It's actually able to act.
Yes, that's correct. So every robotic solution is pre-programmed with a set of definition how you should behave and work given task. Where AI comes in is that the collection and processing of that information in real time to continuously to like human brains. We constantly adjust to new surrounding, new environment. But in this case, the robot is able to do it on its own.
Wow. So I understand Laki isn't focused just on one use case. Can you walk us through different environments your systems are designed for, such as from civilian application to maybe more security-focused ones?
Yes. In every tech startup founder, the focus is on solving a problem. In our case, we're solving the global problem of security, from whether it's school, homes, businesses, or other public events. We're seeing a trend in this global environment today is becoming increasingly unstable and increasingly insecure. There's a trend, there's a pattern of we're seeing, whether it's the Taipei train station incident or Texas school shootings, of these unpredictable events causing confusion, mass confusion, and we don't have enough law enforcement and public safety officer to respond. And when something's happening in real time, we don't have enough information to act on it quickly, to take the proper response. So for us, we're taking a robotic solution to process information in real time, to be able to prevent and stop these violent acts in real time and protect innocent lives.
I see. So why is this happening now? What has changed to make physical AI so viable today?
Well, as you know, physical AI or robotics has been around since the 50s and the 60s, from AMRs and hospitals, warehouses, to robotic arms and manufacturing. What's changed recently through the advancement of AI and GPUs, and also the hardware being better and cheaper, we're able to develop a robotic system solution at a lower cost and faster. So it has immense application in many industries.
I guess probably the sensory of the physical AI is also much more advanced from when it first started today, right?
Yes, again, this goes back to the advancement of sensors like LiDAR, cameras, acoustic sensor, thermal sensors. They're getting smaller, less power requirements, and much cheaper, most importantly.
I see. What fundamentally changes when AI moves from analyzing data to actually acting in the real world?
That's a great question. So typically AI by itself, software by itself, has very limited functions. Most people are familiar with agentic AI or large language models as a software. We're spending a lot of money to build these AI infrastructures. But the issue is we're kind of stuck in this weird place where we're building AI, we're encouraging AI to be used, but people are getting punished for using AI.
Oh.
Employers are saying, job applicants, if you use AI, I'm not going to consider you for a job. Or teacher telling students, hey, if you use AI to help your research, your homework, you're not going to get a good grade. So we're in this awkward position. However, when you take the AI large language model, integrated with robotics solutions, that's something where it has, again, immense application throughout whichever industry. So the same teacher that's telling the student, hey, you're not using AI to do your work, but that teacher will gladly have a robotic with AI to help clean his classroom. So that's the difference.
Yeah. So then where do you see the biggest challenges today? Is it the technology itself or deploying these systems in real environments, as you just described?
I think the real challenge is getting more adoption by early adopters to use it, to try it out. And because we need more data to learn how to improve the system, where it needs to be fixed. Mm-hmm. So, the proliferation of these new technology needs to be accepted by the general public.
Okay. Do you think safety or regulations would be concerns?
Yes, of course. But safety is always concerned whether it's software, hardware, or physical AI. We are concerned with privacy with large language models, how it's analyzing your personal computer data. So, we also are concerned with physical AI that it might be taking action that's not allowed, not authorized. So it's a matter how we build in these safeguards to make sure that our solutions are safe and predictable.
And so one area that I understand where adoption seems to be accelerating is actually in security and defense. How do you think about that part of the spectrum?
Yeah, it has immense application, immense market potential. We're seeing drones being used by law enforcement to prevent and also to stop crime. Mm-hmm. The missing piece is really the ground solution. We call it unmanned ground vehicle, UGVs, or robotic dogs. We believe the unmanned ground solution integrated with drones will give you that 360 degrees security blanket. Mm-hmm. Yes.
And how does a single robotic dog protect or create security defenses for people in need?
Yes. So whether it's robotic dog or unmanned ground vehicle by itself, it's a platform. How it protects the general public is what we leverage our domain expertise. Whether it's retired law enforcement officials or retired military warfighters, we take what we learn in our profession and we train the dog or the UGV to perform a specific task. For example, for a retired police, from experience, he knows that, hey, to probably stop a criminal, the dog needs to run at 5 miles per hour at a certain angle and to launch a certain projectile to disable the criminal. So by working with engineer hand in hand, we transfer that domain expertise, that lessons learned to the robotic dog to take those actions.
So it's able to also maybe aid in decision making in those scenarios?
Yes, and that's how we train the AI model to, based on pre-programmed functions and ingesting real-world data to constantly refine that decision-making process. So we can transfer a police officer's mindset into the robotic dog's brain, and as they learn new information, that decision-making gets better and faster.
So it sounds like a comprehensive set, based on what we're familiar with today on the large language models to actually a physical robotic dog that can actually help us with the daily operations, as such you mentioned, with a police officer. So across all these possibilities, where are you actually seeing traction today? And where do you see that still early?
We're definitely seeing traction, like you mentioned, in the security space. we're getting demand signals from public safety officers for airport protections, for school protections. Parents are always concerned for the safety of the children, and they'll spend whatever money it takes to make sure that the kids are well protected while in school. So that's a huge market that's kind of growing right now.
And what would you say about the ecosystems here from a manufacturing or engineering perspective?
Again, there are a lot of talented engineers, a lot of mature manufacturing process. The folks here, they understand what it takes to build a product really fast and cheap, which is a huge advantage over building products in other parts of the world. Again, and there's a strong demand to work together to penetrate U.S. market or other places, especially the focus of the non-rate supply chain. It's a great opportunity for all of us.
I see. As you mentioned, you have a large spectrum, a full spectrum of products, from everyday use to security and defense. Physically based in Taiwan, how do you think that helps with your global positioning?
Well, every day there's new U.S. companies and clients coming to me, asking me for help to deliver products to them overseas. By being here, again, positioned, I'm able to work with Taiwanese OEMs and to kind of help design and develop products that meets the client's requirements. I think the biggest challenge for most companies is not knowing what the client actually needs. And this is what's unique about us. We by being present both in US and Taiwan, we work directly with the US clients, understand the pain points, and then we turn around and translate those pain points into technical requirements for the Taiwanese OEMs. And we leverage our domain expertise, we leverage our advanced AI engineering in the US. We're able to develop a solution that meets the client's his exact needs.